Okay, I'm heading to my storage unit. I haven't been out there in weeks. Probably since like last October, September maybe, something like that. It's been a while. So I'm gonna go check and make sure everything's cool. And I was gonna grab a bottle of Scotch out of there. I've got all my collectibles, all my spirits collections out there. It's a rainy day today. It's not raining right this second, but it's Saturday the 17th. Yeah. And the guys didn't want to work today. We were on 6 days a week, but they were going to be more or less out in the rain today if they worked, not underneath the roof on the project that we're working on. So, and I think they wanted a break. So, we'll be back at it Monday. We've got about 2 or maybe 3 weeks left. This pimple's going away. Got about 2.5 weeks left, I think, to finish that, and then on to the next one. So the truck is warming up. I get gas today. I woke up this morning, I got a notice, an email from Wells Fargo. One of my checking accounts had been compromised. Somebody tried to do a $195 transaction, which is really strange because I don't use that. The debit card that's attached to that, it's a personal checking account, and the debit card that's attached to it, I've only probably used it like 3 or 4 times. I mean, the account itself is only about 6 months, well, maybe about 8 months old. But I just don't use the debit card a handful of times. But I did use it on July 31st, and I think I bought gas, which is really unusual. I don't know why I did that. Was it for a personal purchase? Because I would have used my business credit cards. I don't know why I did that, but I did. That's the only thing I used it recently on. And you know, you have to put your PIN in at the gas station when you're using it, or at least I did. And then here it is, a couple weeks later, and it's compromised. It's, you know, there's fraud on it. So, you know, I know it's got to be related to that gas station transaction. So it probably somebody that works there, the clerk or something, because I don't know what else. I mean, how else? If you're not using it, how would they get it? They'd have to break into Wells Fargo, and that, you know, they have to have a security breach at Wells Fargo, and that didn't happen. So it had to be, because if you use your card a lot, you know, one of your cards or any card, and you use it frequently, and you get frauded, you don't really know where, because you're using it all the time. But if you got to, like me, I only used it once in the last 3-4 months. I can pretty much pinpoint where it happened then. And even when I was using it that day, I thought to myself, you know, this is risky, because it's happened to me years ago before I switched over to credit cards for all of my transactions. I mean, using credit cards is the way to go anyway. First of all, for business, you could deduct it. Secondly, even if it's not business, people think I'm talking to myself. Yeah, well, I am. Even if it's not business, a credit card, you have more protection generally, and it's safer. You know, you really never should use your checking account card, debit card with your PIN and everything. I know some people have to do that, but it's really high risk, as you know, that's what happened to me. So they're sending me a new card. They caught the fraud. That's the good thing, is they caught it right away. And you know, it was unusual activity. You know, so it gets automatically like red flagged, and then they sent me something saying, "Is this you?" And the only thing we could really determine was it was some jewelry store or watch, some jewelry purchase or watch purchase or something like that. But the name that it gave on the transaction, the it was SP Varce, VARCE, and I googled that, nothing came up. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, today, you know, I normally would have a million.
Some information about today.
Oh, be quiet, Google. I say the wrong thing, and the Google Assistant pops up on my other phone. I got two phones here. What was I saying? Oh yeah, normally I have 1,000,001 things to do. You know, where there's always something to do. And honestly, I don't really have that much to do today. God, I'm just kind of caught up on everything. I could work on one of the motorcycles. It's I got to take the carburetor apart, which is really not a big deal. You just got to dress down for it, because you know, gas, and you got to get a little dirty. But no, not really dirty, but I mean, you don't want to wear nice clothes if you're working on a bike. But the bike is not in the garage. I took it out to the job site. It's stashed under a tarp out there because one of my employees wants to buy it, or is interested in buying it. But I think the float's out of adjustment on it. I messed with the float. I think I got it wrong. I got to take it back apart. It's stalling out. It's got a carburetor. It's a 125 Kayo. It's called Kayo, which is just a Chinese branded motocross type bike. And it's a 125, but it's a small frame 125. It's not a very big bike at all. Not a full-size 125. Like a Suzuki or a Honda or Yamaha would be. But, yeah. I bought it for the grandkids. Bought two of them. I already gave, or one of my other employees has the small one. He has this 4-year-old, and it's a what they call a pit bike, a really small one, and a 60cc. It's at his house. So the grandkids, I got it back from my grandkids because I bought it for them, and they only used it once or a couple times, and now my granddaughter doesn't really want to use it anymore. And then my grandson, I gave him an e-bike, a kind of off-road e-bike, really a nice one. And he'd rather ride that. It's lighter, it's faster, it's larger. It's got dual motors. It's just an awesome bike. So and now he's got a little scooter as well. So he's pretty well set. And then my other grandson, I bought him an e-bike, and he wanted the motorcycle, but he's got nowhere to ride it. I'd have to take him at places to go ride it, and I'm not going to do that often enough, and I don't even know where you can go. You know, nowadays you almost have to join some kind of club or something, or know somebody with property, because you can't just go riding like when I was a kid, just take off in a field. I could do that when I was a kid. You can't do that anymore. Not around here. In certain parts of the country you could, but not here. It's too developed, and our policing is too radical now. You know, they would just come down on you and extort money from you. They wouldn't even give you a warning, probably. They'd make it seem like it was a big deal, like you were trying to commit a felony. You know, whereas before, I mean, the sheriffs and stuff, they didn't give a shit what you did. As long as you weren't hurting or harming anybody, aggravating anybody, they didn't care what you did. I remember I go out in the field and shoot a gun. And then one time somebody complained, and the sheriff came out. And he says, just go out further next time. Go over by the railroad tracks. And he gave me my gun back. You think that would happen today? Shit, no. I'd be on the ground. I'd be handcuffed. Oh, man. I think I was like 17, but I was already living on my own. and I had my dog with me. It was a 22 revolver. If I remember right, it was a 9-shot revolver. Yeah. And then I don't really have. The only gun I have now is a Glock 9mm, the 19 Glock 19. It's got a 5.5, 5 3/4 inch barrel. If I remember right. I want to get another gun. But I might get another one. I was thinking about 1911, but I don't really shoot very often at all anyway. But honestly, I kind of want to get a shotgun for home defense, but I don't know. My kid might shoot me or something. So, I'm just joking. But you know, when you leave a gun out and for home defense, you gotta have your gun out and loaded. Because usually by the time you notice that there's an intruder or something's going on, a lot of times it's not going to be in your yard that you're going to notice. You're going to notice when they're in the house. And if you wake up then, you can't say, hold on a minute, I got to unlock this safe and I got to get the gun out. I got to load it. So, hang tight. And you're definitely not going to call the cops. They're going to come and shoot the wrong person. This is going to make everything worse. Besides, if somebody's if you had an intruder or something like that, and you call the police, what good would that do? By the time they get there, whatever is going to happen, it's happened. I mean, if you had to shoot somebody in self-defense, you got to call the police. If you don't, they're going to assume you're doing something nefarious and you're guilty. And even if you do call, good luck. You got to explain away that you had to defend yourself. But my house is pretty secure. I got like a dozen cameras set up outside. I don't know if people look at that and think I'm paranoid, but really it's just a deterrent. I have a lot of tools. I have a lot of equipment. And I don't want anybody coming into my house and have to deal with all that. So the cameras can prevent all that from happening. And it will happen. It happened to my mother. Somebody broke in. She lives across town. And she was sleeping and they broke in and rifled through all the drawers and right in the bedroom where she was sleeping. Thank God she didn't wake up. Okay, so it's not actually raining at this moment. So yeah, I feel pretty good riding that high from yesterday. I had that court case yesterday. I stood in for my son in a civil case involving overpayment of unemployment benefits dating back to the COVID era and going into 2021. His lungs were compromised at the time, and we were all under at that time everybody was fearful that COVID was, just so deadly, which it was killing old people and whatnot. So we were all like, the doctor said my son really was at high risk for a COVID infection. So his doctor recommended that he doesn't work. So he made a note, and he got a note from the doctor and brought it into work. But I guess they didn't accept it, or I don't know what, he just left after that. My son left, and I started his paperwork for his unemployment because I'm kind of his caregiver at home. That's the long story about his caregiver. So all these a year later, we get a notice. SafeMart Corporation's coming after him for what was originally $4,500, and I don't know why. Then it jumped to $6 something, and now the last thing they sent was 7,800, and they keep adding more interest and penalties and whatnot. But I'm not paying it because we had a pending court case, so I had to appeal that because it was all scheduled to go in front of an administrative law judge, and they made the appointment within a few weeks of the time I filed for that court hearing to appeal it, to dispute it originally. And so I called. I said, you got to change the date. They said, oh, we can't change the date once it's made. I said, well, it says, to bring evidence and submit evidence, he needs his medical records, a doctor's note, medical records from different facilities, and all this other stuff. And that takes months to get. Unless you just drive around, it just takes months to get. It took literally months to get. And so I said, well, I'm not going to have any evidence. Yeah. So they said, well, an administrative law judge called me back on the phone that same day and said, here's what you do. You just don't show up for court. I go, well, that doesn't sound right. He goes, no, that's just the way it is. He goes, if you don't show up, they'll send you a letter saying you missed your court date, and you'll have a chance to appeal it, and then you can appeal it. So that's what we did. So that was one of the issues that came up yesterday. The judge wanted to know, why did you miss your court date? And I'm like, so I had to explain the whole thing over. I said, this is what I was told to do. It makes absolutely no sense that you can't call in and reschedule. And I called in, it was over 2 weeks away. That's stupid. Sometimes the way the government works is ass backwards. I tried to get an attorney. I couldn't get an attorney. Nobody would take the case. I mean, I called a bunch of places. Then they referred me, and I called them, and they called back, and some of them called back. And finally I gave up. I think I talked five different attorneys. I reached out to more, some didn't even respond. And they all said that they would work for the business side or the corporate side or the unemployment side of things, but not on the side of the public. And and I was skeptical anyway, because I figured they'd probably charge $2,500 just to go over all the documents and then sit in for that court appearance, which is like an hour. It was done on the phone. It wasn't, because it was down in Pasadena, California, so they did it on the phone. So I finally just gave up and said, well, I'll just roll the dice on it. And I reviewed it a little myself. A lot of the medical records I already know about. I mean, I know my son's medical history. So I was involved in all that anyway. So I just said, well, I really thought we'd probably lose. So I just said, I'll just go through the motions. I just didn't. I felt it was just going to be stacked against them. And you know what? I think we won. We don't have the final decision yet, but by all indications, it just looked like we won. It just seemed like that's the way it went. I don't want to get into the details, but even the judge, after it was over, the judge released everybody, and they all hung up, and the judge said, told me and my son to stay on, and the judge talked to us privately afterwards and said, Kevin, do you have an ability to even pay this back? And he said, no, I don't. And so she asked a few questions like, what are your bills, your rent, and blah, blah, blah. And she said, okay. She said, you guys take it easy. And you could just tell. It was like, whatever her ruling is, I think she's just going to waive it. She'd have to be a cold-hearted person. Hey, my son was right. They treated him like shit down there anyway. And he had the doctor's note. And that was admitted into evidence. So I'm here, and I gotta look up my passcode. I don't remember it. It's in this. Yeah. Oh, that. Okay. storage code. Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. All right, I'll be back.